The sun cast a gentle glow over the suburban neighborhood as Laura sat on the edge of her bed, the morning light softly illuminating the room. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the medical report, the words on the page blurring together. It was a cruel irony that the same sunlight that usually brought warmth and comfort now seemed to magnify the chill that had settled in her chest. Marcos, her husband, entered the room, his face etched with worry. He had been trying to be strong, to keep up a brave front, but the exhaustion was beginning to show. "Laura, are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His concern was palpable, the kind that can only come from someone who has been living in a constant state of unease. Laura looked up, her eyes meeting his. There was a sadness in them that spoke of more than just physical pain. It was the kind of sadness that comes from knowing something that could shatter the very foundation of their lives. "Marcos, we need to talk," she said, her voice quivering slightly. Marcos sat beside her, his expression growing more anxious. "What is it?" he asked, reaching out to hold her hand. Laura took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "The doctors have confirmed it," she began, her voice breaking. "It's terminal. There's nothing more they can do." The words felt heavy, like they were dragging her down with each syllable. Marcos's face went pale. He squeezed Laura's hand tighter, his own trembling. "Are you sure? There must be something we can do." Laura shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, Marcos. They've given me months, maybe a little longer. But that's it." The silence that followed was deafening. It was a silence filled with the unspoken fears and hopes that had been keeping them going. Laura could see the struggle in Marcos's eyes as he tried to process the news. "I don't know how to tell Sophia," Marcos finally said, his voice breaking. "She's so young. How do we explain this to her?" Laura looked at the family photos on the dresser, each one a snapshot of happier times. "We have to find a way," she said softly. "But there's something more. I've been holding on to something important. I need to tell you both." Marcos's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Laura hesitated, her mind racing. The secret she had been keeping was intertwined with her illness, and revealing it felt like opening a floodgate. She knew it would change everything, but the weight of the secret was becoming unbearable. Before she could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Sophia, their little girl, peeked in, her innocent eyes wide with curiosity. "Mommy, Daddy, is everything okay?" Laura forced a smile, trying to mask the pain. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. We're just having a grown-up talk." Sophia's face lit up with a bright smile. "Can I come in?" she asked, stepping into the room. Laura and Marcos exchanged a glance. The gravity of the situation was becoming more real with each passing moment. Laura knew that this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey, and the challenge ahead was to navigate it with honesty and courage. As Sophia climbed onto the bed and snuggled between her parents, Laura felt a pang of sadness mixed with a flicker of hope. The little girl's presence was a reminder of what was at stake and what she needed to protect. Laura squeezed Marcos's hand and looked into his eyes, knowing that the hardest part was yet to come. The chapter closes with Laura holding her family close, the weight of her diagnosis hanging over them like a dark cloud. The room, once filled with the promise of a new day, now felt like a stage for a battle they were just beginning to face. Laura's heart ached with the knowledge that their lives were about to change forever, but the determination to confront the truth was her only solace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, orange glow across the sky, Laura found herself alone in the quiet of her room. The day's events had left her drained, but the night brought with it a silence that was almost deafening. She sat by the window, staring out at the twilight, her mind a turbulent sea of thoughts and fears. The house was now still, with only the soft rustle of the evening breeze and the occasional distant chirp of a cricket breaking the silence. Laura's gaze was fixed on the darkening sky, but her thoughts were miles away, tangled in the memory of a time long past. The secret she had carried with her for so long now felt like a leaden weight, pressing down on her shoulders and clouding her every thought. The weight of the secret was not just emotional. It was physical, a palpable presence in the room with her. Laura reached for a small, worn box on the nightstand, a box she had hidden away for years. Inside were mementos of a past that she had buried deep, items that once meant everything to her, but now seemed like relics of a life she could no longer fully recall. As she opened the box, a flood of memories washed over her. There were old photographs, letters, and a small, faded locket that had been a gift from someone she could barely remember. Each item held a piece of the story she had never shared, a story that was intertwined with the reason for her illness. Laura's fingers trembled as she picked up the locket, its cold metal against her skin a stark reminder of the past she could no longer escape. Laura closed her eyes, trying to block out the images that surged forth. Images of a life she had tried to forget, a life marked by choices that had led her to this very moment. The secret was more than just a hidden truth. It was a burden she had carried alone, a shadow that had silently shaped her decisions and her life. In the quiet of the evening, Laura's mind wandered back to the pivotal moment when she had first learned of her illness. It was a moment filled with confusion and disbelief, a moment when her world had seemed to crumble around her. She remembered the doctor's words, the way they had pierced through her hopes and dreams like shards of glass. And now, faced with the reality of her dwindling time, she grappled with the daunting task of revealing the truth she had kept hidden. Her reflection in the window offered little comfort, showing a face marked by the strain of her illness and the weight of her secret. Laura knew that the truth she was about to reveal would not only affect her, but would also ripple through the lives of those she loved. The thought of causing them more pain made her heart ache, yet she understood that withholding the truth was no longer an option. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Laura resolved to face the truth with the same courage she had tried to muster throughout her illness. She took a deep breath, gathering her strength for the difficult conversation she knew was coming. The burden of the secret was heavy, but the weight of honesty was lighter, and it was time to begin the process of unburdening herself. The chapter ends with Laura placing the locket back in the box and closing it gently. She stands up, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. The night outside is tranquil, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions within her. Laura's resolve is clear. The time for secrecy is over, and she must now find the strength to face her family and reveal the truth that has long been hidden. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow over Laura as she sat at the kitchen table, her hands resting on a stack of notes and family photographs. The kitchen, usually a vibrant space filled with the aroma of breakfast and laughter, now felt eerily quiet. The clinking of utensils and the hum of the coffee maker seemed distant, as if they were part of a different world. Laura took a deep breath and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost time for Marcos to come downstairs, and she knew that this was a crucial moment. She had to find a way to prepare him, to ease the burden of the revelation she was about to make. The weight of her secret felt like a physical presence, pressing down on her shoulders. Just as she was lost in thought, Marcos entered the kitchen, his face weary but hopeful. He offered a weak smile, which Laura returned with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Morning," he said, his voice carrying a note of fatigue. "Morning," Laura replied, her tone softer than usual. She gestured to the table. "I was thinking we should talk before Sophia wakes up. There are some things we need to figure out." Marcos nodded, taking a seat at the table. He poured himself a cup of coffee, his movements slow and deliberate. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken words and looming uncertainties. Laura could see the worry in his eyes, and she felt a pang of guilt for what was to come. Laura picked up a family photo, showing a happier time when they were all smiles and carefree. "We need to think about how we're going to handle this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "How we explain things to Sophia, how we make sure she feels safe and loved." Marcos looked at the photo and then back at Laura. "I don't even know where to start. How do we protect her from this?" Laura took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I've been thinking about it a lot. We need to be honest with her, but we also need to be gentle. She's so young, and she deserves to have as much stability as we can give her." Marcos ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with the weight of the situation. And what about the secret? How are we going to handle that? Laura's eyes fell to the notes she had been reviewing. The secret was not just a burden but a key element in understanding everything that had led them here. We need to decide if we tell her the whole truth now or if we wait until she's older. I don't want to overwhelm her, but I also don't want to keep anything from her that she might need to know. The room seemed to grow colder as the gravity of the decision settled over them. Laura felt a lump in her throat, the enormity of her situation crashing down on her. She wanted so desperately to protect her family from the pain, but knew that honesty was the only way forward. Just then, the soft patter of small feet could be heard approaching the kitchen. Sophia appeared, rubbing her eyes and looking up at them with innocent curiosity. "Mommy, Daddy, what are you talking about?" Laura forced a smile, her heart aching at the thought of involving her daughter in this turmoil. "We're just having a grown-up conversation, sweetheart. You can join us for breakfast." As Sophia took her place at the table, Laura and Marcos exchanged a glance, both feeling the weight of their impending decisions. The conversation would need to wait, but the preparation was already underway. Laura knew that every word and every action from here on out would be crucial in shaping how their family would cope with the truth. The chapter closes with Laura trying to mask her fears and focus on the immediate task at hand, navigating the delicate balance between truth and protection for her family. The quiet tension in the kitchen is a stark reminder of the difficult journey that lies ahead, as they prepare to face it together, one step at a time. The afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the living room. Laura sat on the couch, her mind racing as she stared at the family photo album spread out before her. The images of happier times seemed to mock her, each smile and laugh now tinged with an ache she could hardly bear. Marcos entered the room, his expression tight with frustration. He had been out running errands, but the tension of the morning seemed to have followed him back. He threw his keys onto the table with more force than usual and collapsed into the armchair opposite Laura. "We need to talk," he said, his tone edged with something that wasn't quite anger but was far from calm. Laura looked up, her heart sinking. "About what?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She could feel the strain in the air, the undercurrent of unspoken words that had been building between them. Marcos rubbed his face with his hands, clearly agitated. "About how we're going to handle this. I've been thinking about it, and I just don't understand why we have to tell Sophia now. She's so young. It's going to hurt her more than help her." Laura's eyes widened, a mixture of hurt and frustration welling up inside her. "We agreed that honesty was the best approach. She deserves to know what's happening, even if it's hard for her." Marcos's gaze was intense, filled with a turmoil that had been bubbling under the surface. "I'm not saying we should lie to her, but maybe there's another way. Something less traumatic." Laura took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. "What other way? We can't protect her forever. She's going to sense something's wrong, and if we don't tell her, she might feel even more confused and hurt." Marcos stood up abruptly, pacing the room. His frustration was palpable. "I just don't think she's ready to handle this. It's not just about the illness. It's about how she processes it. She's a child, Laura. We need to think about her emotional well-being." Laura felt a pang of guilt mixed with a growing sense of determination. "And what about my emotional well-being? I'm trying to prepare for the end, and now I'm supposed to juggle protecting her from the truth while dealing with my own pain." Marcos stopped pacing and looked at Laura, his expression softening slightly but still filled with conflict. "I'm just scared, Laura. Scared of seeing her hurt and scared of not doing enough. I don't want to mess this up." The room fell silent, the tension between them a living entity. Laura could see the struggle in Marcos's eyes, the fear that had been haunting him since the diagnosis. She felt a wave of sympathy mixed with frustration, knowing that their differing approaches were only adding to the stress. Laura's voice was gentle but firm. "I understand that you're scared. I am too. But we need to find a way to deal with this together. We have to be a team, even if it's hard. We owe it to Sophia to be honest with her and to support each other." Marcos nodded, though his face was still lined with worry. "You're right. We have to do what's best for her, even if it's difficult. I just hope we can find a way to make it easier on her." As they sat in silence, the weight of the conversation hung heavy in the air. Laura knew that this was only the beginning of their struggle, and the path ahead would be filled with more challenges. But for now, they had to navigate this first sign of conflict and find a way to move forward together. The chapter closes with Laura and Marcos sitting in quiet contemplation, their shared burden of the diagnosis and the impending conversations weighing heavily on their hearts. The unspoken challenges ahead loom large, but the determination to face them together is the only light guiding them through the darkness. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden hue over the living room as Laura and Marcos prepared for the family gathering. The room was filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies, and the sound of Sophia's laughter echoed as she played with her toys in the corner. Despite the light and warmth, a palpable tension hung in the air, making the house feel like a fragile bubble about to burst. Laura adjusted the cushions on the couch, trying to distract herself from the weight of the moment. She could hear Marcos setting the table, his movements purposeful but lacking the usual enthusiasm. The sense of normalcy they were trying to maintain felt like a thin veneer over the chaos brewing inside. Marcos walked over, holding a tray of cookies. "Everything's set," he said, his voice strained but calm. "Let's just hope this goes smoothly." Laura nodded, her heart racing. "I'm sure it will. We just need to be honest and gentle with her." The doorbell rang, breaking the tense silence. Laura took a deep breath and opened the door to find her parents standing on the doorstep, their faces filled with concern. "Mom, Dad, come in," she said, trying to muster a welcoming smile. Her mother, Eleanor, embraced her tightly. "Laura, it's so good to see you. How are you holding up?" Laura's voice wavered as she replied, "I'm managing. We have something important to discuss." Her father, Thomas, nodded solemnly and followed her inside. As the family settled into the living room, Sophia bounded over to greet her grandparents. Her face lit up with excitement. "Grandma! Grandpa!" she exclaimed, hugging them both. Eleanor smiled warmly, though her eyes revealed a hint of worry. "Hello, sweetheart. It's so nice to see you." As everyone took their seats, the room seemed to grow quieter. The cookies and coffee sat untouched on the table, as if they were mere props in a scene that felt increasingly surreal. Laura and Marcos exchanged a glance, their unspoken tension palpable. "Mom, Dad, thank you for coming on such short notice." Laura began, her voice trembling slightly. "We have something important to share with you." Eleanor and Thomas looked at each other, their expressions growing more serious. "What is it, dear?" Eleanor asked, her voice gentle but filled with concern. Laura took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her secret pressing down on her. "I've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctors have given me only a few months, maybe a little longer." The room fell into a stunned silence. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Thomas sat in shocked silence, trying to process the news. The impact of Laura's words was immediate and overwhelming. "Oh, Laura," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." Laura nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I wanted you to know because you're part of this family, and we need your support. But there's more. We need to figure out how to tell Sophia and how to manage this together." Thomas cleared his throat, his face a mix of pain and determination. "We're here for you, Laura. We'll do whatever we can to support you and help Sophia understand." Marcos, who had been standing silently, finally spoke. "We're trying to balance being honest with her and protecting her from the pain. It's been a difficult decision." Eleanor reached out and took Laura's hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll help however we can. This isn't something you have to face alone." Laura felt a wave of relief mixed with sadness. The family's support was a small comfort in the face of the overwhelming challenges ahead. As they began discussing practical matters and ways to approach the situation with Sophia, Laura could see the determination in their faces. The chapter closes with the family united in their resolve to face the difficult journey ahead. The warmth of their support contrasts sharply with the gravity of Laura's diagnosis, creating a bittersweet atmosphere of solidarity and love. The evening settled in, wrapping the house in a soft, muted light. Laura stood in the doorway of Sophia's bedroom, watching her daughter as she played quietly with her stuffed animals. The gentle hum of a lullaby played softly in the background, creating a serene atmosphere that felt worlds away from the turmoil Laura carried inside. Laura took a deep breath and walked into the room, her heart heavy with the weight of the conversation she was about to have. Sophia looked up, her bright eyes sparkling with innocent curiosity. "Mommy, are we going to read a story tonight?" she asked, her voice filled with the simple joy of childhood. Laura forced a smile, her throat tightening. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy need to talk to you about something important." Sophia's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of concern. "Is everything okay?" Laura sat down beside her on the bed, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out to gently stroke Sophia's hair. "Well, something has happened that we need to talk about. It's not easy to say, but it's important." Sophia shifted, sitting up straight and looking intently at her mother. Laura could see the trust and love in her daughter's eyes, and it made the task ahead feel even more daunting. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Before Laura could answer, Marcos entered the room, his face a mask of determination and sorrow. He took a seat on the other side of Sophia, taking her small hand in his. "We've been thinking a lot about how to explain things to you. We want to be honest, but we also want to make sure you understand." Laura took another deep breath and began, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "Sophia, Mommy is very sick. The doctors have told us that I'm not going to get better. I don't know how much time we have left together, but I want you to know that I love you very, very much." Sophia's eyes widened, a mix of confusion and worry crossing her face. "But Mommy, why are you sick? Can't the doctors make you better?" Laura felt a lump in her throat, struggling to find the right words. "Sometimes, even doctors can't fix everything. My illness is something they can't cure, but it doesn't change how much I love you or how important you are to me." Tears began to well up in Sophia's eyes as she tried to process the information. Laura reached out and gently wiped them away. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I know this is hard to understand. I want you to know that Daddy and I will always be here for you, and we'll make sure you're safe and loved no matter what." Marcos squeezed Sophia's hand reassuringly. "We're a family, and we'll face this together. We have lots of people who love us and want to help. And even though things are going to change, we're going to be there for each other every step of the way." Sophia looked between her parents, her young mind struggling to make sense of the situation. "Will you still be able to read me stories and play with me?" Laura felt a fresh wave of tears threatening to break free. She nodded, her voice soft and trembling. "Yes, I'll do my best to be with you as much as I can, and we can still have special moments together." The room was filled with a quiet, sorrowful silence as the weight of the revelation settled in. Sophia seemed to accept her parents' words with a quiet bravery that belied her age, though the sadness in her eyes was unmistakable. Laura held her daughter close, trying to convey all the love and reassurance she could in that moment. The reality of the situation felt raw and unrelenting, but the tender embrace of family provided a fragile but genuine comfort. As the chapter closes, Laura and Marcos sit with Sophia, the gravity of their words lingering in the air. The delicate balance of honesty and protection they've strived for has been disrupted, leaving them to navigate the emotional aftermath of their revelation. The house was eerily quiet the next morning, a stark contrast to the warmth and laughter that had once filled it. Laura and Marcos were both awake early, their minds consumed by the events of the previous night. The weight of the conversation with Sophia seemed to press heavily on their shoulders, each movement slow and deliberate as if they were walking through a fog of uncertainty. Laura sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold. She stared out of the window, watching the sun rise and cast long shadows across the yard. The familiar view of the neighborhood, once a source of comfort, now seemed distant and surreal. Marcos joined her, sitting across the table with a worn expression. He placed his own cup down with a clink and rubbed his eyes, as if trying to wake from a troubling dream. "How's Sophia this morning?" he asked, his voice subdued. Laura shook her head, her eyes tired but determined. "She's been quiet. I think she's still trying to understand everything. I'm worried about how this is going to affect her." Marco sighed deeply, his gaze falling to the table. "It's going to be a challenge. We need to make sure we're supporting her. But it's hard when we're still trying to wrap our heads around it ourselves." The sound of small footsteps interrupted their conversation, and Sophia appeared at the kitchen door, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. Her face was pale and her eyes red-rimmed from a night of restless sleep. "Mommy, Daddy, can I come in?" she asked timidly. Laura forced a smile and patted the chair beside her. "Of course, sweetheart. Come sit with us." Sophia climbed into the chair, her small frame looking even more delicate in the morning light. She looked up at her parents with a mix of vulnerability and confusion. "I had a scary dream last night. I dreamt that you were gone, Mommy." Laura's heart ached at the sight of her daughter's distress. She reached out and took Sophia's hand, trying to offer comfort. "Oh, honey, it was just a dream. Mommy is still here. We're going to get through this together." Sophia nodded, though her eyes still held a shadow of fear. "I'm scared, Mommy. Will you be okay?" Laura's voice trembled slightly as she tried to offer reassurance. "I'm going to do my best to be okay, and Daddy and I will be with you every step of the way. We're a family, and we'll support each other." Marcos leaned in, his voice gentle but firm. "It's normal to feel scared, Sophia. We all are. But we're here for you, and we'll face these feelings together. You're not alone in this." The family spent the next few hours trying to find a semblance of normalcy. Laura and Marcos engaged in their usual morning routines, though every action felt heavy with the unspoken challenges ahead. They kept their interactions with Sophia as light as possible, focusing on small, comforting activities like reading a story or drawing together. As the day wore on, Laura noticed that Sophia's mood seemed to fluctuate between moments of quiet introspection and bursts of playful energy. The contrasts in her behavior were a constant reminder of the emotional toll the situation was taking on the young girl. In the late afternoon, Eleanor and Thomas arrived to check in on the family. Eleanor immediately noticed the somber atmosphere and pulled Laura into a comforting embrace. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. Laura sighed, feeling the support of her mother's presence. "It's been a rough morning. We're all trying to adjust, but it's hard. Sophia is struggling to understand, and we're doing our best to help her." Thomas gave Marcos a supportive pat on the back. "We're here for you, too. If there's anything we can do to help, just let us know." The day continued with an undercurrent of tension and uncertainty. Laura and Marcos worked together to provide a sense of stability for Sophia, but the reality of the situation was a constant presence, reminding them of the difficult days ahead. As evening approached, the family gathered for a quiet dinner, the conversation sparse and tinged with an unspoken sadness. The normalcy of their routine felt fragile, as if it might crumble at any moment under the weight of their new reality. The chapter closes with Laura, Marcos, and Sophia sharing a quiet meal, the immediate consequences of their revelation settling into the fabric of their daily lives. The challenges of navigating their new reality are evident, but the support of family and the strength of their bond offer a glimmer of hope amidst the uncertainty. The days that followed were a blur of routine punctuated by moments of profound reflection and tension. Laura and Marcos had settled into a rhythm of managing Sophia's emotional needs while grappling with their own fears and uncertainties. Yet, beneath the surface of their daily interactions, a simmering conflict was beginning to emerge, threatening to unravel the fragile peace they had fought so hard to maintain. One chilly evening, Laura found herself alone in the living room, sifting through old photo albums. The photos of her and Sophia, along with Marcos, provided bittersweet comfort. The laughter and joy captured in those images seemed like distant memories, shadowed by the harsh reality of her illness. She paused on a picture of Sophia as a baby, her tiny fingers wrapped around Laura's hand. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she wiped them away quickly, not wanting to be caught in this moment of vulnerability. Marcos entered the room, his face etched with concern. "Laura, are you okay?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. Laura looked up, her expression weary. "I'm just trying to find some solace in these memories. It's hard not to think about everything we're losing." Marcos sat beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know, it's difficult for both of us, but we have to stay strong for Sofia. She needs us." Laura nodded, her eyes still fixed on the photographs. "I've been thinking about how we're going to handle this. I know we need to be strong, but I feel like we're on the edge of falling apart." Just then, Sofia's voice rang out from the hallway. "Mommy, Daddy, can I talk to you?" Laura and Marcos exchanged a glance before Laura called out, "Of course, sweetheart. Come in." Sofia entered the room, her face serious and her small frame tense. She climbed onto the couch between her parents, looking up at them with a mix of determination and fear. "I've been thinking about what you told me," she began. "I'm really scared. I don't want to lose you, Mommy." Laura's heart ached at the sight of her daughter's distress. She took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "I know, Sofia. We're all scared, but we're going to do everything we can to be together as much as possible." Sofia's eyes were filled with unshed tears. "But what if you get too sick? What if you can't be with us anymore?" Marcos put his arm around Sofia, pulling her close. "We're going to make the most of every moment we have. We're a family, and we'll support each other through this." Laura wiped away a tear, trying to muster a brave smile. "We'll make sure to have special times together, even when things get hard, and we'll keep talking about how we're feeling." Sofia nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Okay, I just want to make sure we stay together." As the evening wore on, Laura and Marcos continued their conversations with Sofia, addressing her fears and trying to offer reassurance. However, the strain of the situation was beginning to take its toll on their own relationship. The stress of Laura's illness and the emotional demands of supporting Sofia were creating cracks in the once solid foundation of their marriage. Later that night, after Sofia had gone to bed, Laura and Marcos found themselves in the kitchen, their earlier conversation still hanging heavily between them. Marcos paced the floor, his frustration evident. "I feel like we're not making any progress. Every time we think we're finding a way forward, something else comes up." Laura leaned against the counter, her expression pained. "I know it's hard. I'm doing my best to be strong, but I'm scared too. It feels like we're constantly on edge, and it's affecting everything." Marcos stopped pacing and looked at Laura. His face softened with concern. "I'm scared too. We're in this together, but it feels like we're drifting apart. How do we handle this when we're both struggling?" Laura reached out, taking his hand in hers. "We have to find a way to communicate better. We're both under a lot of pressure, and it's affecting us. But we need to remember why we're fighting so hard, to be here for Sofia." Marcos nodded, his eyes reflecting the depth of his feelings. "You're right. We need to support each other as much as we support Sofia. We have to find a way to stay connected through this." The chapter closes with Laura and Marcos sharing a moment of mutual understanding, their hands clasped tightly. The weight of their situation is evident, but their resolve to face it together provides a glimmer of hope amidst the emotional turmoil. The crisp morning air was invigorating, a stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere that had settled over Laura and Marcos's home in recent days. Laura stood by the kitchen window, sipping her coffee and gazing at the world outside. The sun filtered through the leaves of the trees, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Yet, despite the serene scene before her, a sense of unrest lingered in her heart. Marcos joined her, holding a steaming mug of coffee. He stood beside her for a moment, both lost in their thoughts. The silence between them had become a familiar companion, one that neither of them could escape. "I was thinking," Marcos began hesitantly, breaking the silence, "maybe we should try something different today, something to help us reconnect." Laura looked at him, her eyes tired but hopeful. "Like what?" "I don't know," Marcos admitted, "but maybe we need a change of pace, a day out of the house, just the two of us. It might help us clear our heads and remember why we're in this together." Laura considered his suggestion, a small smile forming on her lips. That sounds nice. We could use a break from the routine. Just us, and a chance to talk without all the distractions. They decided to spend the day exploring the nearby botanical garden, a place they had enjoyed visiting together in the past. It was a place filled with beauty and tranquility, a perfect backdrop for a day of reflection and reconnection. As they walked through the garden, the vibrant colors of blooming flowers and the gentle sound of flowing water provided a soothing atmosphere. Laura and Marcos wandered along the winding paths, their hands occasionally brushing against each other. The beauty around them seemed to help ease the tension that had been building between them. They stopped at a quiet bench overlooking a pond. Laura sat down, her gaze following the gentle ripples on the water's surface. Marcos joined her, sitting close but still maintaining a respectful distance. "I've missed this," Laura said softly. "Just being with you, without all the stress and worry." Marcos nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I've missed it too. I've been so focused on trying to manage everything that I forgot about us. We need to remember to take care of our relationship too." Laura sighed, her eyes reflecting the depth of her emotions. "I've been feeling overwhelmed. I know I've been distant, and I'm sorry. I've been so worried about everything, about my health, about Sophia, that I haven't been present for you." Marcos took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I understand. I've been struggling too. I've been trying to be strong, but it's been hard. I don't want us to lose each other while we're trying to hold everything together." They shared a moment of silence, their hands still intertwined. The shared understanding between them was palpable, a sign that they were beginning to bridge the gap that had formed in their relationship. As the day progressed, they continued their walk, engaging in heartfelt conversations and reminiscing about their shared experiences. They talked about their hopes and fears, their dreams for the future, and their love for Sophia. The openness of their dialogue seemed to lift a weight from their shoulders, allowing them to reconnect in a way they hadn't been able to in recent weeks. Later, they stopped for lunch at a cozy cafe they used to frequent. The intimate setting and comforting food provided a much-needed respite from the emotional strain they had been under. They enjoyed their meal, savoring the simple pleasure of being together without the pressures of their daily lives. As they finished their lunch, Marcos reached across the table and took Laura's hand once more. "Today was good. It was exactly what we needed. Let's promise to make time for each other, no matter how difficult things get." Laura smiled, her eyes bright with gratitude. "I promise. We'll find a way to stay connected, to support each other through this. It's important for us and for Sophia." The chapter concludes with Laura and Marcos leaving the cafe, their spirits lifted and their bond renewed. The day spent together had provided them with a renewed sense of hope and connection, a reminder that despite the challenges they faced, their love and commitment to each other remained steadfast. The winter sun was low in the sky, casting a soft, golden glow over the world. The season's chill was evident, but the warmth of the home Laura and Marcos had built together seemed to push back against the cold. Laura sat in the living room, the room filled with the comforting aroma of cinnamon and pine. Her once vibrant energy had waned, but there was a peaceful acceptance in her gaze. Sophia and Marcos were busy in the kitchen, preparing for a small family gathering. It was a special day, Laura's birthday, and they had planned a simple celebration. The joy of the occasion was tempered by the awareness of Laura's condition, but there was a palpable sense of gratitude for every moment they shared. Laura watched from the couch, her eyes following Sophia as she carefully set the table. The little girl's enthusiasm was infectious, and Laura couldn't help but smile. The family had come together to make this day as special as possible, despite the circumstances. Marcos emerged from the kitchen with a tray of freshly baked cookies, a smile on his face. "Laura, look at these. I think Sophia outdid herself this time." Laura chuckled softly, appreciating the effort. "They look wonderful. Thank you both for making today special." Sophia bounded over to the couch, holding out a handmade card. "Happy birthday, Mommy!" she exclaimed, her eyes shining with love. Laura took the card, her heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's beautiful." She hugged Sophia tightly, feeling the warmth of her daughter's embrace. It was moments like these that made the struggle worthwhile. As the day went on, the family gathered around the table, sharing stories, laughter, and memories. The atmosphere was light, filled with genuine affection. Laura and Marcos exchanged knowing glances, silently communicating their shared pride and gratitude for their family. After dinner, Laura felt a familiar wave of exhaustion. She excused herself and retreated to the quiet sanctuary of the bedroom, where she sat by the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. The world seemed to be blanketed in a serene stillness, mirroring the calm acceptance she had come to embrace. Marcos entered the room, gently closing the door behind him. He joined Laura by the window, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "How are you feeling?" Laura sighed, her gaze fixed on the falling snow. "I'm at peace. I've come to accept what's happening. It's hard, but I know that I've made the most of the time I have." Marcos sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "You've been incredible through all of this. Your strength and love have meant everything to me and to Sophia." Laura turned to him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and contentment. "I want Sophia to remember me not for my illness, but for the love we shared. I want her to know that even in difficult times, we found moments of joy and connection." Marcos nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "She'll always remember that. You've left a legacy of love that will stay with her forever." Laura squeezed his hand, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you for being my rock through all of this. I couldn't have asked for a better partner." As the night drew to a close, Laura and Marcos lay together in bed, holding each other close. The love they shared was palpable, a testament to the strength of their bond. They spoke softly, their words filled with the tenderness of shared memories and hopes for the future. In the quiet of the night, Laura drifted into a peaceful sleep, her heart at rest. She knew that while her time was limited, the love and legacy she had created would endure. The family they had built together, the memories they had made, and the love they had shared would be the true measure of her life. The chapter closes with a sense of tranquility and acceptance. The story of Laura's life, marked by love and resilience, is a testament to the enduring power of family and the legacy that each of us leaves behind. Click on the video being recommended to you now.